Hi, I'm Lena. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking at me now, but I have a problem. You see, anytime I eat anything, something strange happens to me. I could try to explain it to you, but I think it'd be easier if you just saw it for yourself. What you're about to see happens to me no matter how much or how little I eat. And it doesn't matter what I eat. Why donuts? Well, I might as well pick something I like. And I love donuts, but who doesn't? Okay, ready? Yeah, I know. You see, whenever I eat, my muscles flex like crazy all at once, and they grow instantly. I have no control over it. Don't worry, I'm fine. This only lasts for a little while, and then I'm back to normal again. But it'll happen all over again the next time I eat. Exactly why does this happen? Your guess is as good as mine. I've been to every kind of doctor there is. No one's been able to figure out what's going on, let alone do anything about it. I'm a total medical mystery. Some of you might be thinking, wow, that's cool. I wish I could do that. But life hasn't been easy for me. For one thing, I've ruined all of my clothes. And I get strange looks. I think some people are even afraid of me. That's why I got into the habit of eating only at home where no one can see me, late at night. Sometimes I'll eat at Amy's because she's my best friend and she's known about my situation for years. Oh, and the only other exception is at Ron's donut shop. Normally, I'd take his donuts to go, but they're so much better when they're fresh, so I'll sometimes eat them on the spot. Ron doesn't care that I Hulk out. He's known me my whole life, so he lets me eat his donuts in the back where no one else can see. Amy loves Ron's donuts too, so she likes coming with me. Ron's always working on something new for us to try. He makes the best donuts in town. We visited Ron recently, the night before he debuted his new donut holes. We were in his kitchen sampling them, and Amy asked him, "Hey, why do they call them donut holes?" Ron said, "What do you mean?" And Amy said, "Well, this here's called a donut hole, but the actual hole in the middle of the donut is also called a donut hole." He said, "So?" And Amy said, "So what is a donut hole exactly? Is it a donut, or is it the absence of a donut?" Amy tends to get physiological sometimes. Ron just shrugged and said, "Heck if I know, I'm just a simple man who makes donuts." All I knew was that life wasn't easy for me, and Ron's donuts always made me feel better. And I often found out that I needed something to lift my spirits, because whenever guys see what happens to me, they usually freak out, which makes dating really hard. Sometimes they pretend to be cool with it at first, but they end up breaking up with me because I make them insecure. I had a guy once tell me he wanted to be with a girl who made him feel big and strong, and that he didn't feel that way with me. I did meet one guy who liked it, but he liked it a little too much. In fact, he wanted me to stay hulked out all the time, so he'd keep trying to feed me nonstop. But this didn't make me feel good either. So when I broke up with him, I felt super discouraged. Was anyone gonna like me for me? I had to go to Ron's. Because of my problem, I'd gotten pretty good at not eating. But the one thing I couldn't resist were his donuts. I was just about to try Ron's new donut when I stopped. I felt like I was relying too much on donuts to make me feel better. And wasn't eating the problem? What a vicious cycle. That's when I decided, no more donuts for me. So I put down the donut, and I made Ron promise me to never give me any more donuts, no matter how much I begged him. Soon after that, I met Nick. He was a food critic, so on our first date, he took me to the nicest restaurant in town. But of course I didn't eat. I told him I had a stomachache. He was really bummed out about that because he'd gotten us a table at the most exclusive restaurant in the city where there was normally months-long wait list. This was the kind of place that served things like black truffle and sea urchin. It was really hard not to eat, but we managed to have a great time. The date went so well that we continued going out. But because Nick is such a foodie, he kept taking me to other restaurants. I'm sure this would have been great for anyone else, but I never ate, and Nick was starting to find it strange. I couldn't go on forever like this, but I wasn't ready for him to see me Hulk out either. I was just so torn. So as much as I liked Nick, I avoided him. I stopped returning his calls and messages. I knew I had to talk to him eventually, but it wasn't going to be easy for me. But the longer I avoided him, the more difficult it felt. I know it made no sense, but it was just easier to run away from the problem. I was super upset about this, so I went to Amy's. She could tell I hadn't eaten in a while. So she tried to get me to eat something, but I was so distressed, I had no appetite at all. I just needed to vent. I met someone I really like, but of course he had to be a food critic. Amy said this would have been an issue even if he wasn't a food critic. Everyone has to eat after all. She was right. And that made me even more upset. Why did everything have to be about food? It's like we're all obsessed. Food, all the time, it's everywhere. It was all so unfair. I told Amy, if I eat, I'm unhappy. If I don't eat, I'm unhappy. What was I supposed to do? Amy said, the point is not to be happy all the time. The point is to live, which is why you need to eat to do it. It really annoys me when Amy gets philosophical like that. That's when my phone went off. It was Nick, trying to call me for the bajillionth time. Amy could tell it was him too. I didn't answer. Amy said, just talk to him, show him who you are. And I said, and what if he doesn't like it? And Amy said, then he's not for you. As afraid as I was, I knew she was right. I left Amy's that night and tried to psych myself up. I was going to call Nick first thing tomorrow. Before I had a chance to talk, he said, look, food's my passion, and for some reason you're not letting me share that with you. What's going on? Oh, ready or not, at this point, I had no choice but to tell him about my issue. It was hard to explain. I just had to show him. I told him I needed some food. He got super excited. He wanted to book a table at a Michelin star restaurant, but I stopped him. I didn't want to drag this out any longer than I needed to. I just needed to eat something quickly, anything. So I let him inside and found some saltines. Hold on, you're not just gonna eat it plain like that, he said. I told him it didn't matter. He said, if this is the first time we get to eat together, let's do this right. If you give me a few minutes, I can run back to my place and get caviar. And I said, stop it, just let me eat this and you'll see. So I took a bite of the cracker and I felt all my muscles flex and they got crazy swollen and bulged out of my clothes. It had been a while since I'd eaten, so the effect was more intense. Nick just sat there in silence. I told him this was why I never ate with him, and I was afraid of how he'd react. I couldn't bring myself to tell him about this earlier, which is why I'd been avoiding him. But Nick was still quiet. It was like he was frozen. He couldn't talk. I told him to say something, anything. He just cleared his throat and said he was super tired, and then he left. Then I was the one who was frozen. My worst fear had come true. Nick was weirded out. Even after I shrunk back down later, I was more upset than ever. There was only one thing that could make me feel better. So I went to see Ron, and I begged him for a donut. He wasn't sure what to do. I was so hurt and angry, and I took all of that out on Ron when I yelled at him for donuts. Poor Ron didn't deserve that. but he was super concerned for me, so he called Amy right away. Ron wasn't budging, so I hopped the counter and grabbed a donut, practically ate it whole. I felt like a monster. I started crying. A little later, Amy hurried over, joining Ron and trying to comfort me. Why couldn't I just be normal? Why couldn't anyone like me just the way I am? And that's when Amy said, "I do." And Ron said, "So do I." Then Ron went and picked up a donut. He held it up to me and said, "I know I'm just a simple man who makes donuts, and if there's one thing a lifetime of making donuts has taught me, it's this. Watch the donut and not the hole." I looked at him for a beat, not quite catching on yet. I pointed to the donut holes he'd recently debuted. "You mean these?" He said, "No, the actual hole of the donut." Amy wiped a tear from my eye and said, "It means focus on what's there in front of you instead of what's not." Wow, kinda deep. There goes Amy being philosophical again. That's when I realized something. As good as Ron's donuts were, what really made me feel better was them. And I sure was lucky to have them. Do you focus more on what you have or what you don't? And is a donut hole still a donut? Or the absence of a donut? Tell us about it in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden wisdom stories. Remember, when you share our stories, you're sharing wisdom.